Lisa Adams, could you do me a favor? Could you bring an invoice?
Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah, no problem.
Shut the fuck up. Don't be stupid. Just get in. Get in the fucking car.
The film opens with a tense scene featuring Detective Roy Patterson, who is interrogating a man inside a car, pressing him for information about a woman's whereabouts. Roy suspects that this man has kidnapped her in broad daylight. After a prolonged exchange, the man chillingly reveals that the woman is already dead. The narrative then shifts back 8 hours earlier, where we meet a couple, Will and Lisa, as they drive to Lisa's parents' house. Their mood is somber. They are on the brink of taking a break from their relationship due to Lisa's recent infidelity, which has left her feeling discontented with their life together. Will, still invested in their relationship, suggests alternatives to their planned visit, proposing a trip or returning home instead. However, Lisa insists that she needs time to reflect on their situation. While Will fills up the car at a gas station, Lisa steps into the convenience store. She receives a text from Clint, the man she cheated with, but chooses to ignore it. After purchasing a water bottle, she hears someone call her name and turns around. Unbeknownst to Will, who is preoccupied at the pump, a truck momentarily obstructs his view. When the truck departs, both Lisa and the mysterious man have vanished. As Will waits patiently for Lisa's return, anxiety begins to creep in. Minutes tick by without any sign of her, prompting him to check both the convenience store and restroom, yet there is no trace of her. Growing increasingly concerned, he approaches the cashier to inquire if he has seen Lisa. To his shock, despite having served her moments earlier, the cashier claims he hasn't seen anyone who fits her description. With panic rising, Will steps outside and attempts to call Lisa, but his calls go straight to voicemail. Desperation sets in as he shouts her name and frantically searches the gas station grounds, but finds nothing. In a state of urgency, he decides to contact the police to report Lisa missing. Detective Roy Patterson takes the call and reassures Will that officers will be dispatched to assist him or that he will come himself. He instructs Will to remain at the gas station. However, overwhelmed with fear, Will opts to drive directly to Lisa's parents' house instead. Upon his arrival, he finds Lisa's parents, Anno and Barry, bewildered by his presence. They had been expecting Lisa to arrive with Will. Will shares the troubling situation with Lisa's parents, urging them to stay home in case she returns and suggesting they reach out to her friends to see if she might be with any of them. Once Will departs, Barry feels compelled to call the police, his instincts telling him that something is off about Will's demeanor, which strikes him as both erratic and suspicious. Meanwhile, Will finds himself back at the gas station, haunted by a memory of a previous conversation with Lisa when she first broached the idea of taking a break. That moment had sparked frustration and led to a heated argument, with Will believing it stemmed from Lisa's unhappiness in their marriage. Conversely, Lisa had expressed a troubling emptiness, unable to pinpoint why she no longer felt anything for him. In the present, Will steps out of his car as Detective Roy arrives at the gas station. He informs Roy that Lisa has been missing for an hour and a half, and her parents are equally in the dark about her whereabouts. Together, they approach the cashier, Oscar, to request access to the security footage, only to learn that the cameras have been non-functional for 2 weeks. Alarmed by this revelation, Roy decides to issue an Amber Alert to aid in the search for Lisa. He collects Lisa's bag and laptop, instructing Will to remain at the station while he conducts further inquiries. As Roy investigates, Will notices another security camera outside that appears to be operational. He rushes back into the store, demanding that Oscar provide him with the footage. Growing increasingly aggressive, Will finally discovers where the recording device is located. Seizing it, he races to the police station and hands over the footage to Roy, who enlists the IT team to analyze it. When they review the recording, they see a man greet Lisa. It's evident that she recognizes him as they engage in conversation. The man then gestures for her to follow him to his car and opens the door for her. Lisa seems to comply and enters the vehicle, but just as she does, a large truck obstructs their view. When the truck finally clears, both Lisa and the car have vanished. After capturing a picture of the man's vehicle, Will is called into a separate room for questioning by Roy. Initially, Roy poses straightforward inquiries, but soon pivots to probing into Will and Lisa's marital dynamics. Frustrated and agitated, Will insists that Roy should concentrate on finding Lisa rather than delving into unrelated matters. However, Roy calmly explains that he must consider all possibilities, including whether Will himself might be involved in his wife's mysterious disappearance. Roy raises a provocative question, suggesting that Will's success as a property developer may have led to the creation of enemies who could be motivated to kidnap Lisa. Frustrated by Roy's relentless probing, Will demands to leave the interrogation. He heads straight to Lisa's parents' house, where he shows them the image of the unknown man in his vehicle. To his shock, they recognize him as Knuckles, a handyman they occasionally hired and a childhood friend of Lisa's. Anna recalls seeing Knuckles at a place called Morrison's, igniting a flicker of hope in Will. With this new lead, Will rushes to Morrison's, cleverly deceiving Roy over the phone by claiming he's simply wandering around town. Upon arrival, his GPS confirms he's at the right location. He exits his car, grabs a crowbar, and navigates through the woods until he reaches a wooden fence. Peering through the gaps, he spots the car he's been searching for. Determined, Will breaks into the property and finds Knuckles hastily packing his belongings. Stealthily entering the trailer, Will confronts Knuckles with the crowbar, demanding to know Lisa's whereabouts. Initially tight-lipped, Knuckles eventually reveals that he left Lisa with a man named Frank after Will delivers a menacing blow. In a desperate bid for his safety, Knuckles promises to lead Will to Frank if he stops the assault. Seizing the moment, Will finds a gun in Knuckles' trailer and uses duct tape to bind Knuckles' hands and silence him before forcing him into the trunk of his car. As Will drives toward the location Knuckles mentioned as belonging to Frank, he is pulled over by a police officer for speeding. Heart racing, Will warns Knuckles to remain quiet while attempting to maintain his composure during the interaction. However, things spiral out of control when the officer asks him to step out of the vehicle and open the trunk. In a panic, Will abandons the car and flees into the nearby woods. Meanwhile, Roy returns to the gas station in search of Oscar, only to find that it's the end of his shift and a new cashier has taken over. Undeterred, Roy visits Lisa's parents to inquire about Clint. Anna informs him that Lisa hasn't been in contact with Clint for quite some time. Roy explains that the last 3 emails sent to Lisa were from Clint, pleading for a meeting, but she never responded. The police investigate Clint but find nothing suspicious in their search. Amid growing tension, Barry presses Roy to take more decisive action in locating his daughter, but Roy explains that without sufficient evidence to indicate a crime has occurred, their hands are tied. In the dense woods, Will skillfully evades the police and resolves to continue his pursuit of Frank on foot. Guided by the distant sounds of gunfire, he emerges onto a narrow paved road where he encounters an ATV. As he attempts to start it, a towering man suddenly appears, warning him to halt. The man inquires about Will's identity, and with quick thinking, Will feigns interest in conducting business with Frank, claiming a connection through Knuckles. Though initially skeptical, the man reluctantly allows Will to proceed after witnessing Will's convincing act and receiving no response from Frank on his radio. Will soon discovers that Frank's location is a compound teeming with drug addicts and dealers immersed in their illicit activities. Stealthily navigating the area, he manages to avoid detection until he spots Frank issuing commands to his crew. Gripping his pistol tightly, Will continues his quiet advance and slips into a nearby garage. However, he is caught off guard by a man seated in a car, leading to a fierce struggle. Will successfully knocks the man unconscious, only to be startled by the sight of Oscar, revealing his unexpected involvement with Frank's operation. Seizing a shotgun from the fallen man, Will approaches Oscar, whose presence adds an unsettling twist to the unfolding chaos. His instincts guide him toward a warehouse that appears to serve as the heart of the drug manufacturing operation. As he stealthily infiltrates the building, he inadvertently crosses paths with a worker but swiftly incapacitates him and presses on with his search. Moments later, Will reaches the main room, which is ominously filled with barrels of hazardous materials. Summoning his courage, he steps forward and shines his flashlight on Frank and one of his associates, Larry, demanding to know Lisa's whereabouts. Frank feigns ignorance, heightening Will's unease. Desperate for answers, Will instructs them to open a large container, suspecting it might hold Lisa. As Larry begins to comply, Frank intervenes, triggering a chaotic struggle. In the ensuing turmoil, Larry accidentally knocks over some materials, creating a cacophony that adds to the confusion. Seizing the moment, Frank attempts to flee, but Will pursues him through the dimly lit warehouse, which is cluttered with stacks of boxes and barrels, resembling an intricate maze. Eventually, Will corners Frank, who stumbles and injures himself in the process. As Frank lies incapacitated, he fails to provide any information about Lisa before losing consciousness. Frustrated and realizing he has exhausted all leads, Will makes his way out of the warehouse. Unbeknownst to him, the earlier chaos has ignited a small spark near some volatile chemicals, setting the stage for an impending disaster. Outside, Will encounters Oscar, who appears visibly anxious. They engage in a cautious conversation where Oscar vehemently denies any involvement in Lisa's disappearance. After a moment of uncertainty, they reach a tentative agreement to collaborate. Oscar then reveals that he knows Lisa's whereabouts but demands payment in exchange for this crucial information. Will grapples with doubts about Oscar's trustworthiness, but when Oscar produces Lisa's phone as evidence, he reluctantly consents to the deal. Just as they begin to delve deeper into their discussion, a sudden explosion erupts from the warehouse behind them, triggered by the earlier spark. Both men turn in shock as thick smoke billows into the air. Meanwhile, at the police station, Roy receives an update regarding the incident involving the officer who stopped Will's car. Acting swiftly, he and his team establish a search perimeter. Soon after, Roy arrives at the scene where Knuckles is confined in the back of a patrol car. There, he interrogates Knuckles with a stern demeanor about Lisa's disappearance. Under pressure, Knuckles begins to recall the events at the gas station, how he confronted Lisa with a knife and abducted her. Yet, when Roy presses him for the truth, Knuckles vehemently denies all allegations. Unyielding, Roy warns him that failing to come clean could result in a lifetime behind bars. Cornered and desperate, Knuckles finally relents, claiming that Lisa is dead. He then divulges that he informed Frank about Lisa's plans to visit her parents, suggesting they could kidnap her for ransom, knowing Will's wealth would make them a target. On that fateful day at the gas station, when Knuckles unexpectedly spotted Lisa, he acted on impulse, following their scheme and bringing her to Frank's compound. However, upon arrival, Frank was enraged to find Lisa caught up in their covert drug operation and ordered Knuckles to dig her grave. Fearful for his own life, Knuckles fled instead of carrying out the grim task. After hearing Knuckles' account, Roy and the police rushed to Frank's compound to extinguish the fire and apprehend his gang. Nearby, Will, looking disheveled and weary from the explosion, sits beside a police car. When Roy approaches, Will anxiously wonders if he will be arrested for taking Knuckles. Roy calmly instructs him to remain where he is before moving toward the rear of one of the buildings. There, he discovers a human-sized hole concealed by a metal sheet. With a heavy heart, he lifts the sheet, bracing himself to find Lisa's body, but to his astonishment, the hole is empty. Meanwhile, Will explores the area and hears faint whispers in the distance. Following the sound leads him to a small shack where he finds Lisa locked inside. He quickly frees her. Overwhelmed and shaken, she pleads with Will to take her home. Without hesitation, he scoops her up and guides her away from the nightmare they've endured. Back at Lisa's parents' house, Will stands in the driveway as Roy arrives after concluding his investigation. Roy informs Will that the police are aware of the altercation at the compound and that he discharged his weapon during the chaos. However, in a surprising turn of events, Roy chooses not to arrest Will and allows him to leave. The film concludes with Lisa holding Will's hand as they walk into the house together, symbolizing their commitment to stay united despite the harrowing ordeal they've faced. Thank you for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.